Hi YouTube, I'm Marko with Marko Custom Fab, and today we're taking the generator out of this Nash and replacing it with an alternator. But it looks like a dynamo, so it's called a dynamometer. So this is it here. We're going to put this in. It looks like a generator, but it has an alternator inside. What's nice about this, it'll retain its original look. I'm going to tell you why I went this way instead of just building alternator brackets and either using a GM alternator or 10SI or maybe even just an alternator off an MGB, and why I went to this. And I was able to get this right in stock here where I live. They had it, and it's about half the weight of a generator. I don't have the I don't have a scale to tell you the difference. It'd be nice if I did. And we'll go through this and unbox it. So let me just set this down. So this is just some the bill and the company. I'm going to shout out to Ken Miles at Brick Bits. He has a company here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and he deals with English cars and parts, and he's always got stuff in stock. Like I was able to walk in, he had this, I didn't have to bring it in. So I came in and was able to leave with it. So that's just the billing and stuff for that. It was about $300 Canadian. And then it comes with an instruction sheet. This is how your regular generator is set up through the regulator. And you have to bypass the regulator. What I'm going to do is take the regulator apart and solder it all up inside, so that you still make the connections. It looks like it's there to keep its original look, but it serves no function, just basically becomes a junction box. So that's the sheet for that. So inside here, sit there, get out of the bag. We have here what looks like a generator, bolts up to the factory mounts location, and we got to use the pulley that's on the engine, or on the old generator, and the fan, and then we'll put this on the car. And to do this, this car, I'm going to note, is positive ground, and I'm going to convert it to negative ground as well. So we'll do that conversion at the same time, and yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so inside the car here, we're going to pull out this back seat lower panel. I'm just going to set that like that. Pop off the battery cover here. I have to clean all this here. And then we're going to disconnect the battery, and then we're going to have to turn the battery around, so we're going to have to undo everything here anyway, like undo the battery hold down, and we're going to flip that anyway. So we get right on that. So yeah, when converting your car from positive ground to negative ground, it's not a bad idea. If you want the car to be completely original, it's not a bad idea to just leave it. It doesn't hurt anything. The thing that'll affect if it has a radio that's set up, this car has an original radio that is a positive ground. So sometimes you can, on some radios, and I've been told, and I don't know if it's like that on this one, there's actually a piece you pull out and you flip it, and it can be positive or negative ground. I don't know that yet on this car. But anyhow, the radio doesn't work, so I'm just going to disconnect it for safe measures, so there's no more damage being done if there is any. And then I'm just going to just disconnect the radio because it doesn't work, so I'm going to get it sent out, maybe converted into something modern, but still retain the look, and then it'll be converted to negative ground anyway. So we're just going to be able to have this negative ground, no problem. Alright, get some tools. I also want to point out on this job that even if you already have your car set up for negative ground, I just recommend disconnecting the battery doing this job anyway. So just in case you're kind of wondering if you're going to get into this job, just disconnect the battery anyway. It's always a good idea when you're disconnecting a battery, taking it out, to disconnect the ground first. The battery's live, so if you happen to, let's say, make a connection with a wrench from the battery post to the body, it won't short out. Once that one's disconnected, then when you go to take off the positive post, if you make a connection to the body, you're not going to short out. So it's always a good idea to hook up your positive first and take your positive off last. So just a good note for any classic car, or any car for that matter. What I got here is the ignition coil and the generators on the same, like the bracket goes around the generator, holds the coil. We're going to want to switch the polarities around on the coil. We're going to have to pull the bracket off and the coil off, consequently, to change the generator. So we're going to just pull the coil off and then put it back with the power lead going to the positive side of the coil instead of the negative side of the coil. Okay, and then the negative side will go to the points instead of the positive side going to the points. One of the things I want to note, I'm using a fender cover on the leaning over this car. I do wear a belt, not a big belt buckle, but there's a buckle there. So if you want, you can wear your belt off to the side as well. It's a good idea. And use a fender cover, or do one or the other. Just a little note there. Sometimes it's hard to get fender covers. My friend was looking for one and he couldn't find one. I was asking where I got mine. I can't even remember where I got the one I got. But anyway, we'll just undo the coil and and take it off of here, and same with the generator. There's 3 bolts on the generator. One has the adjustment, and then the 2 pivoting bolts on it. Also, we have to undo the wires to the generator as well. One of the things I want to talk about on this engine that I'd like to do is change out all the hose clamps so they kind of, they all match. And that's something I'll do to kind of detail this engine up a little bit so it looks a little better. And then if there's any wiring that has to be fixed, I know there's a couple areas that need to kind of be addressed. I'll be doing that as well, and I'll show you guys that. But today we're just doing this. So the 2 wires on the back of the generator, they just have flat blade connectors. On the new one, there's 2 flat blade connectors. I don't know if I'll have to change the ends. But anyway, that's the generator wiring, the wiring for the coil. It's can't mix them up. They got different ends on them, so it's pretty straightforward. You could label these if you're worried about it. Already I've forgotten which one is positive, negative, but that's okay. When I turn the key on, I'm going to check with a test light or a voltmeter and find out which one has power, and that'll go to the positive side of the coil. This other wire here goes to the temperature sensor in the block. It's a mechanical gauge, so that wires, we don't have to touch it. We just have to work around it. I'll get some tools to get the other parts off. I love ratchet wrenches. One of the best inventions. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about is the way the bracketing works. As you can see, there's a bracket here, and that bracket, if you had an alternator on a newer MGB, would bolt further up the same bracket to do some embosses in the block. This car, the Metropolitan, the 1500, doesn't actually have that in the block, and I'll show you what I mean. This is an MG 1800, and you can see here that the bracket can move to, there's casting in the block. I'll move this wire out of the way. There's casting in the block here. You could move this bracket here, and then English alternator will fit in this. And they're a pretty good alternator. So I would run one, but I don't have a way to put it in the car. And so by using this other generator slash alternator, it'll actually allow it to bolt it right into the car without any complication. And putting I could custom fab a bracket up. All right, comparing the alternator generator to the original generator on the car, they look the same. They have the same length. They got the same steel looking body with a screw here. They got the aluminum ends on it. This bracket should fit around that one. The only difference on the end here, you'll see where the wires go. This has the wide plug, and that one would go to the same place, and then this one where that pin would go. So everything plugs into the factory wiring. You don't have to cut and put new ends on it. If it's in rough shape, you gotta change them. This basically, the alternator that's inside of this is basically a Bosch alternator, I've been told. So it's made in China, but it is got quality components inside. And Ken was telling me that he hasn't had much problems with these, and they're pretty reliable. According to the box, they put out about 45 amps max. In a car like this, I'm not running a big stereo or power windows or anything, so this is more than enough, and it's actually more than what this factory generator will put out. So it's a good setup. And one of the things we got to do is take the pulley off of this and the cooling fan, and then put it on the front of this new alternator. For that, I'll use an impact, just because it's hard to hold this with a ratchet. With the impact, it's quick and easy. You just want to be careful when you put it on, you don't over tighten anything. Now, generally, when you're using an impact, I just want to point out you should use a black socket. I'm not using one here. This is not a lot of torque on here, so, but I know it's not that good for the sockets. Pulley comes off. And fan. So putting it back on is a very simple process, just like taking it off. You want to check, make sure that there's good clearance here. It is, which is to be expected. Okay. Comes with a new supplied nut, so I'm going to use that instead of the old one. We'll just give that a little, not too much. We see something here. The new nut's pretty thick. If the old one's got the right threads on it. No. I'll have to use this nut. Just sticks out a bit, it's thicker. Could take that to the lathe and shave it down, but that's all you want to do. You don't want to get it too much on there. And man, that's nice. We're going to put that on the car, and yeah, get it all. Oh, we got to transfer over this bracket as well. So for transferring that bracket over, it's a good idea to line up the alternators, or the generator and alternator, side by side, and then line this up to go on exactly the same way. I like the sticker, advertises, but it's kind of bright, doesn't really suit the car. I'm going to pull that off. Here. Okay, so we'll have to spread this just a little to get it off of this one, and then we'll get it right back on. Again, this piece would be nice to bead blast and paint, so one day I'll get a bead blaster. Alright, right off the bat I see I got a problem. This is bigger in diameter, and that's not allowing me to mount the this bracket on. So I didn't know that, so we learned this together. Okay, so don't worry about the bracket. We're going to put this on the car. I'm just going to have to relocate the coil. Okay, I found another issue. The belt alignment isn't that good on this setup. Looks like an old, maybe a 70s Chrysler. So I'm going to have to take this out of here and take this nut off, take this pulley off. I'm going to have to take some off of this pulley and get it closer to the fin plate here, cooling plate, so that I can line that belt up. So let's do that. Okay, well, I got it chucked up in the lathe here. I'm just going to take a little bit off. Just going to mark a little line here. Go up to that line, and we'll try it out. This is I bought this dynamometer, so I wouldn't have to do a lot of fabricating, but since it is custom fab, you're getting the custom fab part of this, but not everybody has a lathe. You could do this with a grinder. It's aluminum, so it's nice and soft. So just a little bit at a time here. The truck is holding on to just a tiny little bit of that, the pulley, so we're just going to take a little bit off at a time. Okay, also I want to note, if you do this, there's really no turning back unless you get a washer or something. So we're committed. We're committed now. Alright, that's all I had to grab onto that. Anyway, let's try it out. Okay, we're back to where we were a little while ago. Should slide on nice here. Okay. That nut on. Okay. That's about where I want it. What's nice about that too, the new nut, it actually fits much nicer on there. It doesn't overhang, so I'm happy with that. Don't have to machine the nut down. Alright, let's get that on the car. Looks like our pulley alignment's a little better. I might have to take just a little more off, but let's see. Oh, that's perfect. Okay. Alright, get the bolts in. Okay. Good. Let's actually go that way. On a side note, really got to get an air-conditioned shop. These mosquitoes are killing me. Okay, so I just had to move the camera. You don't get to see me actually work here, but I'll just get this done. Okay, so I just pulled the regulator off of the firewall of this car, and it has these set screws. The wire goes in, you just strip the end and it fits in, so there's no connectors. And let's pop this open and show you what I want to do here. Set this stuff aside. Okay, so inside this regulator, it's a little bit nasty looking. I can see why it's not charging anymore. This connection is broken. Judging by the discoloring on the wiring here, this has gotten hot, and that's what I was smelling just before the charging system failed. A little bit of corrosion on this. Anyway, I'm going to gut this whole block and make a connection here. I'm going to connect these three together, and then I'll show you how I hook that up. Because right now I just have to hook up all the positives wires together. Okay, so you can see on the bottom of this regulator I have, I'll show you the cap. This cap goes on here like this. So A, and F go together. We can just, all the wires that go to A, and F go together. There's one fine wire that comes off of F and D, and they got to go together. And then E just goes to ground, and the ground is to actually ground this unit. Since we don't have to have ground going to this unit anymore for everything that's inside, this is we don't have to run that ground, but we're going to just put it on there for looks. So a little better view here on the coil that's burnt, and it broke off here, and there's quite a bit of corrosion in here. These are adjustment screws. You can adjust this. So maybe it's stuck on and then overheated. Cook this. But anyway, we're just going to gut all this, and this will be just an empty void. So I'll do all that, and then I'll show you what after. Okay, as you can see, what I did here was, if you can see, I soldered all three of these together using a wire. I left this one open, and then this one's a ground on this side, but again, the ground just grounds this. So if it's not actually hooked up, it wouldn't matter, but I'm going to have the wire going there so it looks like it's hooked up. Still looks factory. Okay, so one of the things, it's a good idea when you're working on a car like this, is just to, clean the area behind, because it's going to just stay dirty if you don't. Just helps make the appearance better. There's a lot of areas that need some attention, but at least behind this old regulator, it's nice and clean. I want to note, you can buy a piece like this by basically the same company that makes that alternator generator. That's all this is done for you, but it's like $75. So a little bit of my time. If you don't have good soldering skills and things like that, just spend the $75. It might not be a bad idea. But for me, I wanted to show you how that was done. This is a nice little cubby now. You can use that to hide something, maybe a spare key or something. If you lock a key in the car at a car show, you could keep a spare key under there. The hood doesn't lock. Now let's go through and hook up these wires. I may have to take the strippers and clean up some of the ends and remount them down. You can see it looks like it's factory. Can't really tell. But inside here, there's no regulator. It's no longer needed with the alternator, so you can just fill this out or look at it. It's kind of cool. Okay, as you can see, I got the battery hooked back up, but this time I got the negative going to the body of the car and the positive going up to the starter solenoid. So I also relocated the ground, was bolted to a bolt here. There's actually a designated bolt on the side for it, so that's there. I'm going to replace this ground cable, but I'll do that another day. Just want to get up and running and check out how it works. So put the cover back on. Your seat back in, and I'll show you what we got buttoned up under the hood. Okay, so now you can see I got the generator in, and what I did, I put the coil back where it's supposed to sit. I just got a longer bolt, it was 2-inch long, and that was able to tie on that bracket, and hooked up the positive wire to the positive side of the coil, and the negative wire goes to your distributor. There we go, and then there's the regulator. Well, there you go. We got rid of this heavy old generator and put in an alternator. It's going to charge better, weigh less, and be a little more reliable. It's not that generators aren't reliable, it's just that if you need something for them, they're not always, it's not always easy to get parts for, and as we saw, that regulator was pretty rusty inside, so that was sort of the problem. And again, I'd like to thank Miles Import Cars and Ken Miles there, also known as Brick Bits here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. He had this in stock for me when I went in, so it's a nice piece. So if you ever need a part for any British cars or minis, things like that, he's the guy to see. I've been dealing with him for quite a few years back when I had an old mini and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a nice product, fits well. You might have to machine down that pulley, I'm not sure, depending on the vehicle. On this application I had to, so if you want to do this yourself and you don't have a lathe, you might have to get somebody to lay that down about 1/8 of an inch. And it fits good. The only disadvantage to putting this in is if you're on a road trip or something and you need a replacement part, if this were to fail on you, it's not something that you'd be able to buy, you know, a parts source here in Canada or Canadian Tire, Napa, or like down in the States like Pep Boys, things like that. So I don't know if they'd carry something like this there. So you kind of have to either order this online or pick it up from your specialist and then have it on hand. It seems to be a pretty reliable product, I've been told, and so we'll try it out and I'll let you know if there's any issues. This wasn't sponsored. I bought this. I'm going to be honest with you. Like I said, the only thing was I had to machine that pulley to fit this application. So sometimes if you don't have a piece of equipment like that, it might be a little bit harder to do, but if you have somebody who can do it, it's not a bad install, as you see with the regulator and the generator to the alternator. So it's I recommend it. On my other old cars that have generators, I've converted them over to alternators, and I've done it for some friends of mine. And it's just a better charging system, especially if you're going to use the car quite a bit. I do like to use my cars. So if you like this video, please subscribe and have yourself a great day.